You clicked on this video because you're interested in building momentum in your Etsy shop. We're going to cover how I built momentum in my shop, how long it took me, and I'm going to give you 2 tips at the very end, so stay tuned, that you can start in your shop right away to start building that momentum. Hi there, Simply Shauna here, and this channel is all about how I've built a 6-figure business with no extra training or going back to college. I was a 4th grade teacher, was able to quit my job a few months ago, and now do Etsy full time. I can do it from wherever. If I'm traveling, I can take time off whenever. I'm sharing how I was able to build this, and it's completely repeatable, and you can do it too. This video is the 3rd in a series of how I made $117,000 revenue in just 1 month, which broke down to about $27,000 profit in just that 1 month. I'll link the other 2 videos in this series down below. I go into the listing strategy that went into making this possible. I also, in the next video, go into the ads strategy, the Etsy ads strategy that I used. Although you don't need to use Etsy ads, I did build this business without using them, but I got very good at them the last couple of months, and I share all the things that I learned so that you can repeat that in your own shop to maybe have a little bit faster growth than I did in the very beginning. In this video, I'll be talking about momentum, and this is one of the most important pieces of how I got the business to a place where I was able to make so much in just 1 month. So first I'm going to throw some stats up, and we'll look to see exactly how the shop progressed and picked up momentum. You'll see in not so much time how I went from being absolutely nowhere to being somewhere incredible. And I hope that you'll find hope in that and fuel to keep going in your own shop to plug along until you're getting to those places of seeing a lot of success, because that momentum just starts compounding on itself. And stick around to the end because I've got 2 tips for you that you could start implementing in your shop right now to start building on that momentum and making sure that you're doing the right things so that you can have big results. And then at the very end, we'll have a tip from Tucker. What you're looking at here are some numbers, and let me explain them to you. I find them incredibly exciting. So the very top, you've got November 1st through November 30th of the year 2020, and this would have just been shortly after I opened my shop. And if you take a look at the revenue there in 2020 for that 1 month of November, you'll see I have a revenue of $83. The profit for that month was probably, I don't know, maybe $7 or $8. And now let's look down at 2021, exactly 1 year later. So at this point, I've been listing for an entire year. I've been trying to gain momentum, and it did take me about 7 months to start seeing some payoff in my shop. I have another video that I'll link down in the description below, my very first video on the channel that explains that story. But here in 2021, I have $20,000 revenue. So to start out in November of 2020 and have $83 revenue, fast forward to 2021, $20,000 revenue. That was around $6,000 profit. Fast forward to this past November, I had $110,000 revenue, which was around $27,000 profit. I show this to you because it's just astounding what 2 short years can do for the growth of your Etsy shop. And it also makes me really, really excited to see what will happen 1 year from now, 2 years from now. Here we can take a more overview of the momentum of the shop. So you'll see here, this is 2021, the entire year, and you can see that most dots are moving up. I drop there in June, and then I drop again in October. But most months we see an upward movement. There were some specific reasons why I dropped. I'm going to do a whole video on that. And as we round out to the end of the year, we're way up there at 539 orders in December, where we had started 26 orders back in January. Okay, so now what's going to get really interesting is to watch as I'm continuing to list, I'm continuing to round out my shop, and I'm continuing to make sure that I'm listing things that are selling at different times of the year. So now let's compare 2021 to 2022 and see how the shop grows in 2022. And actually, real quick, before we skip to the next graphic for 2022, do notice there at the top, the revenue for 2021 was $107,000, and that was my first full calendar year of having the Etsy shop open. All right, now we're looking at the next graph. I'm looking at it here with you on the computer. And we see the revenue now, this is 2022. And we see the revenue is $422,000 for the year 2022. Just let's take a second. That's kind of incredible. To have a business model where you're opening a business and in the first full calendar year, $107,000 revenue, which wound up being around $33,000 profit. Second full calendar year open. Mind you, most businesses are in the red the first year. They're not making money. Second full calendar year that this business is open, now we have quadrupled up $422,000 revenue, which wound up being about $107,000 profits. I just think that's absolutely incredible. So now let's take a look at how it grows. First of all, underneath in that, the gray dotted line, that's 2021. So I wanted you to be able to compare where the dots were for 2021 to where the dots are for 2022. So let's just take January, for example. That January dot was 26 in 2021, 26 orders. And in 2022, January's dot is there for 206 orders for January. In November, the increase for the dot is just incredible. The dot in November in 2021 was 508 orders, almost triple this past November with 1,465 orders. Just incredible. The amount of growth that can happen so quickly. I can't wait to add another line to this. I don't want time to go by quickly. Let's slow it down. But I am super excited to see where we could get this graph going for this year. One more thing I wanted to mention on the topic of momentum for the year 2022 was just that it was super interesting that in 2021, I had a late start to making those Christmas sales, and I had that one thing pop off. Right there after Black Friday was when my one item just really popped off that made me half the money I made during Christmas. But what was so interesting on the topic of momentum here is that in 2022, I started selling from that listing in July. And as we, worked up to November and I was pushing out all of those new listings that I was making in conjunction with the fact that I had this momentum going from the year prior with the Christmas sales starting from that one listing that I'd already sold from the year prior. It was just really incredible to watch how many Christmas sales rolled in with that momentum that was started the year before. Let's take a look at my tips for how to help make that momentum happen in your shop. Tip number 1, make more of what is selling. So let me explain that a little bit more. If you have a shirt or a design on a tote bag or a mug that sells, well, once it sells, it's time to now put that design on more items. So you can put it, let's say you had it on a shirt, now put it on a mug, now put it on a tote if it makes sense on those items. Put it on more colors. Offer it, if you were offering it on black, maybe now you're going to offer it on pink or on green. Now I have had a bunch of people ask me in the comments, hey Shauna, do you take a design and get more listings out of it by listing it on lots of colors? I don't do that. I don't spend the time on doing that until that design sells. While it is quicker to take a design you've already done and now duplicate that listing and have 5 or 6 of them in black and white and green and pink and yellow, whatever, on a mug, on a tote. And now you've got like 8 or 9 listings with this one design. You feel like, oh man, I'm filling my shop up. I've got so many listings. You're filling your shop up, in my opinion, in such a weak way. I did try this and I felt like I was spinning my wheels. And I felt like, oh, well, look, I've got so many listings. But it was such a weak way to measure whether or not what I was doing was working. So I was being so hard on myself. Well, look, I've got this many listings and I'm listening to this YouTuber and they said they had this many listings when they had this many sales. But here I was kind of cheating and I had one design on 8 different things or colors, and in my mind going, oh, you know, I've got all these tries out there. Instead of doing that, you might want to duplicate, A/B test, have that same listing on the same color, but A/B test, just have two listings out there with that same design where you're testing either the main mock-up photo or you're testing the SEO. I will do a video going further into the A/B testing. But that might be a better way than having it out in 6 different colors. I do not do 6 different colors unless, and even then I might do 3. If that item starts selling, then I put it on more items. Sometimes to start, I'll put it on a shirt and a sweatshirt. Another example of what I mean by make more of what is selling isn't just doubling down on that exact design, but also doubling down in the niche that you're selling in. So if you sold a back to school 4th grade teacher shirt, then you're going to want to make more back to school teacher shirts, and then from there, more teacher shirts in general for other times in the school year. So doubling down can also mean just doubling down in that niche. Remember, all of those SEO terms, all of the terms that is in your title and in your tags, you are now getting a little love in the algorithm for using those terms. So you want to make more things in that niche. Also, when someone clicks on that design that maybe you originally sold or are selling a few of, when they click on that design and you have more items in your shop in that niche, Etsy will show them more items from this shop that you might also like. And they're going to see those other items too, and they might add some more things to their basket. And one more example of what I mean by doubling down or making more of what is selling is it could also be the clip art that you're using. You might want to use that clip art in more of your designs. So for example, in 2021 at Christmas time, I had something pop off and go great. It had 2 elements to it. It had phrases that were a little different than what everyone else was using. You really want to try to do something different than everyone else. That was one of the reasons that it went well. And I also was using some clip art that I didn't see anyone else using. So the following year in 2022, I thought, okay, well, let's use that clip art in some other designs and see if that does well. And it did. So that could also be something you could try. Use the clip art of whatever that design is that's doing well, if it makes sense to use it with some other phrases. Next up is tip number 2. But before we get there, I just want to remind you, if you stick around to the end, you'll get a tip from Tucker as he takes it away. And if you're finding value from this video, I'd so appreciate it if you subscribed, if you're not already a subscriber, and if you'd smash that like button. Drum roll, please. Tip number 2. Okay, so tip number 2 is simply to make consistent, intentional efforts to round out your shop. At least that's what I did. Now, I've always thought about it like building train tracks. You've got this train and you're trying to get it going. You got to give it so much fuel. You got so much energy. It's so hard to get it going. But then once it gets going, you have to have train tracks for it to keep going and chugging along, or it will just putt to an end. So for example, if you start your shop in October, let's say, and you do so good at creating Christmas listings and you get some to pop off, which will be better than what I did my first year. Kudos to you if you were able to do that this past year. Then if you don't go in and in December start making items that are now going to sell in January and February, your train's got nowhere to go. It's going to putt out. or it's going to slow down to a screeching halt, and then it's going to be harder to get, it's like you got to get that train going. So the best piece of advice I could give here is to be dedicated that first year when you're opening your shop, or from whatever moment that you're maybe already opened a shop and you're trying to pick it back up. Dedicate yourself for like, okay, I'm going to do this for 1 year. I'm going to do this. And just do it. Just do it. And just decide now that I am going to make dedicated, consistent listings every month, every week, I should say, every single week, in an effort to make sure that 90 days from now, 60 days from now, I've got a load of things in my shop, a nice showing of things in my shop to sell that people are looking for during that period of time. Like if you're watching this as it's dropping, when it's out here in January, you should be making St. Patrick's Day things right now. And that shouldn't be the only things you're making. I would also be working in like maybe 2 evergreen niches and making St. Patrick's Day things that cross over into those evergreen niches if it works. But at any time, you want to be thinking ahead and making sure that you are making designs and listing things for items that are going to be selling 60 days from now. And this is how you want to round your shop out. And for anyone who doesn't know what an evergreen niche is, that is a niche that sells year round. So, St. Patrick's Day shirts don't necessarily sell year round. You might sell a random one here and there throughout the year. But dental shirts, say, or any profession shirts, those sell year round. Maybe they're a little better at certain times of year than others, but there are items that someone could buy at any point. And if you're digging your way into the dental niche and just, every week trying to get a couple of listings up in that dental niche or another profession, then cross niche that with St. Patrick's Day or whatever holiday is coming up, and make sure that you do a dental St. Patrick's Day shirt. So if you've been listening, you probably understand by now that this is not a quick buck scheme. It does take discipline, it takes determination, it takes persistence and effort. However, it does have a huge return on your investment of that time and effort that you're putting in. And I'm really only getting started with seeing just how big that return on my investment of time and energy is. Feel free to leave a comment if you've got a question or a suggestion for a future video. I'll be reading and responding to all of them. And go ahead and click the link up above if you are interested in hearing a little bit more about how to get your Etsy shop jump-started and moving and growing. And of course, Tucker, take it away.